These three are arguably the most exciting new electric cars of 2024, at least when it comes to new electric SUVs. And believe it or not, Audi is already a well-established player in the electric car market, offering the most models on sale of all of these three brands. They first came out with the Audi E-Tron back in 2019, a car I've owned privately. And then we have the Macan, which is the second electric car model to come from Porsche. They first took the world with storm back in 2020 with the launch of the Taycan, another car that was so great that I went out and bought one of myself, and I've had my Cross Turismo for almost 3 years. And if you're new to the channel, Polestar is a brand I absolutely love. But believe it or not, the Polestar 3 is the first electric car to come from the brand that is on a dedicated electric car platform. And in today's video, we're gonna compare all of these three together. We're gonna look at the exteriors, we're gonna look at the interiors, the practicality, the front, the trunk, the range, the efficiency, the driving experience, the value, the pricing. And if you don't go crazy with the options, these three are actually much closer in price than you may think. So today, we're putting this against this, against this, and at the end of the video, we're gonna crown a winner and see which one you should buy. Hyundai are giving away a total of 1 million kroner in their Christmas calendar this December. Every weekday, a new slot is opened and a new winner is announced. The prize given will be used to pay down any debt you may have, because the Hyundai app is all about saving you money and you becoming the boss of your own economy. Download the Hyundai app today and use the referral code LRIFA to get double bonus points this December. You'll find a link down below. Now, on with the video. Now let's start by looking at the interior here in the Audi Q6 e-tron. And starting price, this is the cheapest car, but optioned this way, this is actually a little bit more expensive than the Polestar, but far from as expensive as the Porsche. And that kind of shows in the interior that this is the car that has the lowest starting price, because overall quality is decent to good, but there are places in this interior with hard touch, cheap plastics that you're just not going to find in those other cars. Here on the center console, here on the dashboard, also high up on the doors, and also around the door handle. But since this isn't the entry-level version, you have niceties like these beautiful sports seats with this quilted pattern. You also have stitching here on the dashboard with this beautiful Alcantara type of material, also stitched faux leather up here. Panoramic sunroof, and overall, when you option out the Audi, it is a pleasant place to be if you can look past some of the cheap materials. Also, the infotainment system here is not as big or as fancy as what you find in the Polestar, but it just works. This is the new Panorama MMI infotainment system that Audi launched with this car. It is Android based, and I've driven Q6s on so many occasions now, and they just work. I haven't experienced any flaws or bugs with any of the cars, and the adaptive driver assistance system just works. So like, it may not be as fancy as the Polestar, but everything just works. And also you have a lot of switches, like a volume knob, you have a physical gear selector down here, start stop button, you have stalks behind the steering wheel, you have a cruise control stalk, even more switches over here. So from an ergonomic standpoint, I think this is the best interior of the bunch. But is it nice enough for an interior this price point? Let me know in the comment section down below. The doors feel kind of cheap-ish on the Q6 e-tron. So the rear seats, not the biggest. Like I've talked about this since the first time I sat in the back seat of a Q6 e-tron. Compared to the Q4 e-tron, I don't think there's more room here. So this seat is set to my driving position. I'm about 180 centimeters or 5'11", and it's fine. I mean, the seat is quite a bit up of the floor, so you have, decent under thigh support, though there could be a little bit more, and also have room for my feet, but like knee room is pretty limited. Headroom is decent, but this is not a spacious rear seat, and a lot more cramped than I remember it being. On paper, the Q6 e-tron has a trunk that is 526 liters. But I think compared to the other cars, it's probably the most spacious, though the Porsche on paper has more cargo. If you come a little bit closer here, you can see that this is a square shape. It's quite tall. It's very, very usable, but there's this strange like lip there. So I think when you fold down the rear seats, it doesn't go completely flat. And also, if you look down here, yes, you do have underfloor storage, but you have this subwoofer that takes a lot of that room. So I'm gonna put the numbers of the front up on the screen now because I don't remember it by heart. And so strange that there's a latch here. This is always annoying. Where do we find a latch in 2024? Okay, I mean, come closer. It's decent. It's filled with cables. It's not the smallest frunk here. I think the Polestar has a smaller frunk, so decent, but I don't think you're gonna fit anything more than a sport bag in the front of the Q6 e-tron. The Porsche has easily the highest price spec of all of these three cars, but you can get the Porsche with, you know, decent equipment at around the price of those other cars, or a little bit more expensive. So you don't have to spend this much money. This is 1,354,000 kroners, while the Polestar is 1,015,000 kroners, and the Audi Q6 e-tron is 1,049,000 kroners. So this is a lot more expensive, but compared to that Audi, it really shows in this interior. So you have the upgraded leather interior that gives you leather on the top of the dashboard, on top of the doors, on the armrest here on the doors. You also have these beautiful 14-way comfort seats that are heated and ventilated. This also has the upgraded Bose sound system. You also have the optional passenger screen. You also have the optional sport chrono clock. I mean, the list goes on and on and on because this is a Porsche, and the nice thing about Porsches is that you can option them to the brim if you want. You don't have to. You can get very close to this experience and save a whole bunch of money and still have this beautiful premium interior. I mean, this feels like a Porsche. I remember the first time I drove the Macan EV, sat in one, which was a lower spec than this, and I'm like, yeah, this reminds me of my private vehicle, which is a Porsche Taycan. It's not as nice as a Taycan, but this car is also considerably less expensive than the Taycan. You have a really nice driving position. There's so much adjustability in the steering. You can get it super close if you want. You can just get this really nice racy position. This steering wheel is beautiful. And actually, when I'm thinking about it, there's actually more physical buttons here than with the Audi, because you have your normal window switches. You have maybe less buttons on the steering wheel. You have the stalks, but you have a drive mode selector here. And also you have this, which is your HVAC controls. Yes, there are some touch buttons here, but you also have physical buttons here and also a volume knob. I think ergonomically, this is probably the best out of the trio. It's not as spacious as with that Audi, and also the infotainment system screens here are a little bit smaller, but this gauge cluster here is also very, very nice. Yeah, like if just interior wise, like if you want a luxurious experience, I would rather go for a low spec Macan than a high spec Q6 e-tron, because I think the base product here, like the quality of materials, you don't have those, you know, those hard touch plastics here. Everything is just superb quality, and it just feels like a level above the other cars here. So let's see if the Porsche is as small. I'm not opening the door all the way because there's a pole there. I don't want to scratch the paint. But this is interesting. So I'd say, like, lengthwise, rear seat legroom, there's about the same amount as with that Audi Q6 e-tron. And that makes sense. It's built on the same platform. They have the same wheelbase. Also headroom here. Yeah, this is sloping, so there's a little bit less headroom. I'm fine, but I think my camera guy, who's like 190 centimeters almost, I think he would probably struggle. But quality also, this is a really nice interior. And looking at, you know, that dashboard from the rear, yeah, this is a nice experience. I mean, there's a little less room than with that Q6 e-tron, but like, because of the quality, I prefer this. And it also has peasant blockers. Are these operated manually, or? Yeah, I don't know how they work. There's no, yeah, I don't know. Maybe here? Nope. On paper, the Macan actually has the biggest trunk of the lot here at 540 liters. But is that bigger than the Audi Q6 e-tron? I don't know, it's hard to see. Maybe it's a little bit more flat, and also look here, you don't have any underfloor storage. So how can this be bigger? Yeah, that is very curious. I'm gonna call bullshit and say that they're just playing with the numbers here. Like, this isn't bigger. And also because this is a sloping, you know, fastback, the body style, there's no room above, you know, the Porsche shelf here, which is, according to the VDA numbers, this is where they stop measuring. So in the real world, there's no doubt in my mind that, okay, this has more storage on paper, but the Q6 has a bigger trunk in practice. So with a Macan, you can open the frunk with the key, but I also think you can do like something like this. Yeah! And it pops up with no latch. Okay, that is pretty awesome. Like, why doesn't the Audi have that? I mean, that is so practical. Okay, that is pretty cool. I'm a little bit jealous. I don't even have that with my Taycan. So if you come closer here, you can see that the frunk is probably the same size as that Audi, but I think the shape here is a little bit, it's shallower here. It's a strange shape. Maybe you'll get a gym bag, but yeah, it's decent at least. So I've had this specific car for more than a week and a half now, made a whole bunch of videos, and this interior, this experience is very different to those other two cars. Of course, it's on a different platform, but it's also on a platform meant for bigger cars. So first off, this has soft close doors, while the other cars doesn't. I think it's an optional extra in the Porsche and maybe also even in the Audi, but here it is standard with this package. And also the room in here, it is so much more roomy. And I think if it wasn't for that Porsche having the upgraded leather and all of those options, this would actually have the nicest interior. Because, okay, it doesn't have leather on the dashboard, but it has this beautiful stitched fabric, and also you have this beautiful open pore wood. Here you have soft materials, here you have soft materials, here you have soft materials. This has a beautiful Nappa leather interior with ventilated seats, heated seats. They're also massaging. And also, these seats are probably the best by good margin of all of these cars. There's just a lot of room. The driving position, though I wish the steering wheel could get even further to the driver, it is superb. I feel like I'm in an SUV. I feel like I'm sitting high because the car is high, but also I feel like I'm sitting low in the cabin. I mean, this is a different experience. Infotainment system, I've talked about that extensively in other videos, so if you want to know the deep dive, check my review out. It works fine. It's a little bit buggy, but the worst thing is the layout. Where with the other cars, like the Audi, you have a drive mode selector down here. With the Porsche, you can do it here. Here, come here, you have to press this button and then go into settings and then go into drive, and every time you want to change something, and then you go home and then you have to do the same thing every time. Hopefully, they'll fix that with a software update. But like with this car, like the overall product is so nice. Like the materials here on the dashboard, it's simple and elegant, and I really like it. It is a proper special feeling car, this. And also to top everything off, you have this beautiful Bowers & Wilkins domed Nautilus tweeter on top of the dashboard, which gives this car probably the best sound system in any car that isn't like a Bentley or a Rolls-Royce or a Mercedes Maybach. It is superb. I really like this car. And if it wasn't for that, you know, that Porsche having even nicer materials, even nicer switchgear, and also better ergonomics, this would easily be my favorite. But I like this almost as much, but for completely different reasons. Yeah, it's just a little bit tight here because we are also filming a range test between all of these cars. So if you want to check that out, that should be up on the channel already, putting all of these cars up against each other. And also, guys, before I forget, I want to try to test this in warmer weather. Also the same with the Macan, the Q6 e-tron, the new Audi A6 e-tron, the Polestar 4, Mercedes G580, and all of those cars. Warmer weather, but here now it's like -4. It's winter, it's just going to get colder and colder. But I want to try to go to California or somewhere, so I've started a GoFundMe. If you want to support that trip, it will be linked down below. And after about 3 weeks, we've already raised like 25% of our goals. So if you want to support that trip, I really do appreciate it. Then we're going to be able to do winter testing now instead of next summer. So all contributions, big or small, much appreciated. Thank you very much, guys. You'll find the link down below. But guys, this is a completely different experience. Okay, the negatives first. You're sitting closer to the floor than those other cars, so you don't have, the same under thigh support. But you can easily fix that by just, moving your feet forward. And look at this amount of knee room. Like, I can cross my legs easily here, and also the floor is completely flat. This does have a sloping roof like with that Porsche, but there's so much room. And also even in the middle here, super comfortable. I mean, you could easily be 3 adults abreast here. I mean, this is just easily the best rear of the car, all of these cars. This beautiful armrest here. Look at this, beautiful perforated leather. I mean, this is just a rear seat experience like those two cars can't even get close to. So on paper, the Polestar has the smallest trunk of the lot, only 485 liters, but come closer. Does that look smaller than the other? I think like width-wise, length-wise, this is easily the biggest. Is it because they stopped measuring here because of this lip and that area is smaller? Because come on guys, this is easily as big as that Q6 E-Tron and much bigger than that Macan. 485 liters according to VDA, while the Audi has 526. I don't know, they have different kinds of math. And this is the kicker. Look at this. Look at that huge underfloor storage. How is this the smallest trunk of the lot? That makes no sense. This has this Bowers & Wilkins sound system that is, Bowers & Wilkins proprietary technology. So instead of having a subwoofer case like the other cars here, the subwoofer is actually built into the chassis using this space as the subwoofer case. Also explains why this is easily the best sound system. But yeah, that's bullshit. This is by a large margin the biggest trunk here. So I think you have to unlatch this also. Yeah, the latch is somewhere over here. There we go. Why do these have latches? Okay, so this has easily the smallest trunk. I think this is 32 liters. It doesn't look very big. Yeah, you're not gonna get a gym bag here like with the other two cars. Okay guys, we had to double check. So I'm gonna jump into the trunk of the Macan here and you guys can gauge. Okay, this is me in the Macan. Let's hop into the Audi. This is a real scientific test. I mean, how is this smaller than the Macan? That makes no sense at all. Okay. Okay, now this fell off, okay. This looks a lot bigger, but let's check out the Polestar then. Okay. I don't know, okay, maybe it is smaller. I don't know. Let me know in the comment section down below. But if you include the underfloor storage, this is at least as big, right? But yeah, maybe it's smallest, like this room here. The Audi is an evolution of the design language we first saw with the Q4 e-tron, sprinkled in with a little e-tron GT over those rear arches and taillights. It is also the most SUV-like here with a more square and upright body style. For me, in the right spec, with the right wheels, I think the Q6 e-tron is the most stylish and best looking car here. In this color, Manhattan Gray, and with those wheels, I think it is a bit boring. But in white, with the S-Line exterior and on 21-inch wheels, it looks awesome. In this spec, the Polestar 3 is also a little boring. But also like the Audi, in the right spec, I think the Polestar 3 looks great. It looks a lot better in person than in photos or video. The low and wide stands really doesn't translate well on camera and has to be seen in person for one to really appreciate its unique shape. It also has cool and unique details like the dual blade headlights and that front spoiler to reduce drag. Spec-wise, the Porsche is hands down the best looking here. And my friends who helped me film this video and the triple range test of these cars also agree. If you want to see how these compare against each other in the real world when it comes to range, I will link that video down below. The Porsche Macan looks like a Porsche Macan. Like every Porsche before it, replacing an old model, it just looks slightly more modern. And this defines Porsche as a brand. For many, it is a good thing, but for others, it may be a bit boring. I think it looks pleasant, but nothing more. It's just nice, but far from new and far from exciting. Now let's start driving the Audi. So to turn the Audi on, you just have to have your key on your person. I think you can also set up a key phone, but I'm not sure. So you should just be able to sit in the seat and the car should turn on. There we go. Sometimes it takes a second, sometimes it doesn't. And you can see that the steering wheel is up because this has comfort access or comfort entry, whatever Audi call it, turned on. I don't like that. Usually I turn it off because you can see now the steering wheel hasn't come all the way down. Luckily, I've set the memory setting 1 to my driver position. So the car should be on now. And because we are past July 2024 and we are in Europe or in the European Economic Zone or you live in the EU, this car is bound by new regulations that state that for every key off cycle, lane keep assist, speed limit warning, and driver monitoring alert systems have to turn on every key off on cycle. So if you get into your car, you turn off those assistant systems, those annoying nannies. Every time you go out of the car and in, key off, key on cycle, it has to reset. It doesn't matter if you set your settings or your profile or whatever. That is a EU mandatory regulation that applies to all cars sold after July 2024. Some cars implemented it before, some cars implemented it like in July, but this car has it. So I find those nanny systems annoying. In some cars, it's less intrusive than in others. Like in this car, driver monitoring alert system isn't intrusive at all. The Polestar, that's a different story. In other cars, it's a different story. But I usually turn off lane keep assist because I don't think that works very well on many of the roads here in Oslo or in Norway, and also speed limit warning because that's just annoying. So to turn off lane keep assist in this car, you just hold the button here on the outer stalk, on the blinker stalk. For a few seconds, it turns off. Pretty nice. Audi have had that for years. And also to turn off speed limit warning, you go into the infotainment system, you press that, and then you go into driver assistance systems. I haven't found a shortcut for that yet, but maybe you can configure one that is easier to access, but it is pretty simple. So put the car into drive and the car goes into D and it starts creeping. As you guys can see, no foot on brake and there's no one pedal drive. But if you put the car into B, so you do it twice, you do it once, twice, it goes into B. Now it holds on the brake and there's no creep. And when I go off the brake, full one pedal drive. So this is the first Audi to have full one pedal drive. The Audi E-Tron didn't have it. The Audi E-Tron GT had even less of regen. The Audi Q4 E-Tron had a lot of regen. It had that B mode, but it didn't come to a complete stop. So this car is built on the same platform as that Porsche, and I would describe the way this drives as an Audi built on a Porsche platform. So I found some early documentation a while back that Porsche were the lead on the development of this chassis, and they got help from Audi, and Audi were of course allowed to, dictate attributes and stuff like that, but the main lead was done by Porsche. And it really feels like that because I've had an Audi e-tron GT, which is built on a Porsche platform. This feels closer to that Macan than the Audi e-tron GT feels to a Taycan, and that says a lot. Steering is much closer, body control, the way this drives is so much closer to that Macan than any other Audi before it. I really like the way this drives. This is our 4-corner air suspension. This is the least powerful and the least quickest car here. 387 horsepower and 0 to 100 kilometers an hour in 5.9 seconds. But don't be fooled by the numbers. It's still gonna be quick enough for most people. Like in everyday driving in the city, it's fine. And also on the motorway, it's gonna be fine. It's not a quick car, but it's quick enough. So this is on 4-corner air suspension. There are a few modes here. When I drove it on the motorway yesterday in my previous video, which was the range test in between all of these 3 cars. So if you want to see that video, detailed video about what ranges these cars get in the real world, not just WLTP numbers, go check that video out. It's up on the channel. I'll link it down below. But when I drove it on the motorway, I described it as being bouncy. But there are a few drive modes here. It defaults to balanced, but when I put a car into comfort, it's not as bouncy, it just softens up, and it was a real nice car driving on the motorway. So if you put this car into sport mode or dynamic mode, it feels sharp, not as sharp as the Porsche. The steering, though weighted nicely, no feel at all. Feels kind of artificial. The least inspiring steering out of the trio, but it's still a great car. You sit really nicely, good visibility. These seats are the same seats as you'll find in the Porsche Macan if you option the sports seats. Great seats, but again, out of the trio, these are the least comfortable, the least supportive, but they're still really nice. This has the S-Line interiors, have this beautiful, you know, quilted pattern, and it's just a nice place to spend time. This car makes a lot of sense if you don't option it to be very expensive. It is really nice. But there's one major problem with this car that I've complained about and other reviewers have complained about, and that is tire noise. So this car on Norwegian roads with summer tires is very, very noisy. I did a range test between this and the Skoda Enyaq. Skoda Enyaq being a much cheaper car, and this car was as noisy as that Enyaq, or maybe even noisier when it comes to tire noise. And that is not expected when you're paying this much money. And in this party, it's by far the most noisy. Yesterday we filmed a range test and we were switching in between the cars, and I was talking to the guys, you know, on the Bluetooth hands-free, and I could hear the road noise of this car through the speakers of the other cars. It was that noisy. So that's my only major complaint. Now the car is on studless winter tires, so it's going to be a lot quieter than on summer tires, but still, it's not quite enough for being this expensive, in my opinion. And that's a pity because I love the tech, I love the interior styling, though again, some of the bits and bobs here, you know, are a little bit cheap feeling compared to the other cars. I like the driving position. And yesterday, after the range test, all of the guys were fighting because nobody wanted to drive the Audi. So I'm like, okay, I'll take the keys to the Audi. And when I cranked up the Bang & Olufsen sound system, which is awesome, it's a must-have option if you like listening to music. This car just came into its own. It was just a pleasure to drive. But that was because I couldn't hear that drone of the tires. So the only major issue about this car, and it is a pity because it is a great car. I really like it, but it's too noisy for how much you're paying for it. Just like with the Audi, you have the key on your person, sit down in the driver's seat, and this is a lot more responsive than the Audi. It just works. And this isn't my first take, guys. The steering wheel comes down, the seat moves forward. Yeah, no hiccups here. So put on our seatbelt, and then to turn off the two systems in this car, because again, driver alert monitoring doesn't seem to be annoying in this car. I can look to the left when I'm driving into a roundabout. I can fiddle around with the screens and with the HVAC without the car, you know, nagging at me, unlike another car here. So to turn off lane keep, really easy. You just hold the button here on the cruise control stalk for a few seconds. It goes off, and then to turn off speed limit warning, you press this button here, which I think is customizable, but all the Porsches I've ever driven, they have this programmed as that you know, button to turn off, all the new Porsches. So gear selector up here, there's only drive, park, and so on and so forth, and no creep, and also no one pedal drive. So you can either coast or there is regen. Regen is on here. So in my Taycan, you know, which is almost 3 years old now, this diamond button here, which turns off the lane, or turns off the speed limit warning here, engages and re-engages that regen, turns that on and off. But here, you have to do it in the menu, which I think is fine because in my Porsche, when you switch in between the different drive modes here on the mode selector, it turns that on and off depending on the mode, and I always want it on. So here it's always on. So now we're normal. If I go into Sport or I go into Sport Plus, it's still on. So that is really nice. A thing that is curious about this car is that there's no range mode like in the Taycan. That is strange. So when we did our range test yesterday, this was the only car driven in a mode that was not the most efficient, just in normal mode. But that should be the most efficient here. So right away, this car feels more Porsche than the Audi, of course. The steering is sharper, the weighting is more substantial, there's much more heft to the car. I mean, it feels like a very solid product. My best analogy is I'm into watches. I've been into watches for, I know, the better part of a decade. I grew up with my dad into watches. I've had quite a few watches, both expensive and not expensive watches. And I'm a fan of Rolex because they have really good craftsmanship, or machinemanship, I would say. But the watches feel very substantial. The clasp is of high quality. And you can buy watches from other brands that are almost expensive, like an Omega, for example, which make beautiful watches, but they just don't feel the same, right? I had a friend of mine a few years ago. He bought a Speedmaster, a very popular Omega watch that, I've been looking at for many years. He bought one, and after like a week, he sold one. He bought it new, lost money on it because it's a nice watch, but it just doesn't feel as substantial as his Rolex Datejust. And that's the best way I can describe this. The Audi is an Omega. It's a fine watch, a desirable watch. Feels nice, looks nice. But this is more like a Rolex. It's just more substantial. It just feels higher quality. Like, it just feels nicer where it matters. The way this drives, the way it feels, no, it's not as comfy as that Audi, but also at the same time it glides better over the bumps. The steering is just so much sharper off center, and the steering ratio also seems to be shorter. So it's just nice. Like the weight of the switchgear, the touch of the interior. I mean, it just feels so substantial. It's the best way I can explain it. It's just really, really nice. So curiously, this doesn't have a lot more horsepower than that Audi, but it's also almost a second quicker 0 to 100 kilometers. 5.1 seconds versus 5.9 in the Audi. And they basically have the same drivetrain, same front and rear electric motors, same battery pack, same inverters, etc. But this is just tuned differently. Yeah, this has that Porsche feel. It's just nice, guys. It's just nice. It's so hard to convey on camera, but they took a Taycan, put it into an SUV shape, and voila. It's great. Polestar have provided me this key card to unlock the car, and it also starts the car. You can also connect your phone, and there's also a physical key. But what's interesting about this, you should have thought that on the door handle there is this indentation, right, for keyless entry, which is the universal icon or the way you unlock cars. I thought the first time you tap this key to that part, but you actually tap it to the left part, where it's just completely flat. A little bit confusing, but once you know it, you know it. So you put the car key here, where you charge your phone, and foot on the brake, drive, and the car turns on. So unlike the other two cars, there are very few physical buttons here, and basically no shortcuts, and a lack in functionality, because like the steering wheel buttons here, there are only 4 buttons that work, though they're like room for 8 buttons. The Volvo EX30 has the same layout, the Volvo EX90 has the same layout, and they have marked buttons. Here it's just blank, so you can only increase and decrease the speed of your cruise control on the left side here, and also you have your voice commands, and you can change the screen here. You can't skip forward on a song, you can't turn the volume up or down, you can't resume your speed with the cruise control on the steering wheel, and you can't toggle between pilot assist and adaptive cruise. Though you engage adaptive cruise or pilot assist pulling down this, and you can also hold it down to resume your last speed. So when you put the car into drive, it defaults into drive. It defaults into the drive modes you have, or drive settings you have in here, which is buried in a menu, which is annoying because every time you want to change anything, you have to go through this. Creep is off. You can turn creep on, and also this has full one pedal drive. You have setting 1 and setting 2. I have in setting 2 the most, aggressive, and also creep off. Also range and performance mode. When you go into range mode, which it defaults to front wheel drive, and when you give it the beans, it couples the rear motor. There's like a second delay, and also throttle response is very lethargic. I prefer driving the car in performance mode. You can also do a lot of different like steering weight, suspension feel, all of that, which is really nice. So to turn off the driver assistance systems, again into the same menu, settings, and then assistance systems. Turn off speed limit warning, turn off lane keep assist, and unlike the other cars, I turn off distraction alert because it is very aggressive in this car. Even with it off, if you're doing too much here, like changing your music or changing the settings of your drive, it will beep at you. And if you're driving with pilot assist, like auto steer, and you do it too much, it will give you like 2 or 3 warnings, and then it won't let you engage auto steer until the next time you key off and on the car, which kind of defeats the point. It's annoying. So there are a lot of software niggles here that are annoying. There are a lot of functions that aren't here that the other cars have. So if that annoys you, this really isn't the car for you. For me, I mean, at worst, it's a little bit frustrating sometimes, and at best, just a little bit annoying. Most of the time, once you get driving, it's fine, but hopefully it will get better. But where this car is completely different to the other cars is just the way it feels. So those two cars, yes, they feel related. Those cars feel like they're built on a platform where Audi have done their magic and Porsche have maximized what is possible with that platform. Porsche have done what Porsche do best and worked their wizardry and made it as good as can be. This, it feels like, was started on a platform from a higher tier, so a higher starting point, and Polestar have done their magic, and Polestar haven't had to do as much engineering as Porsche to get the most out of this. That's what this feels like. This feels like if Porsche had worked on this platform, it would have been even better. But what that means is that this just feels like a more expensive, a more upmarket, a more luxurious, a more premium starting point. Yes, this doesn't have the leathers, this doesn't have, you know, the fine tactile feel of the switchgear and the precision of, you know, the stitching and the interior bits, but as an all-rounder, I think this is better than the other two, because you're getting more comfort, you're getting more isolation, you're getting a substantial feel, maybe not as substantial as in the Porsche, but this glides over the same stretch of road that I drove the two other cars on in a completely different way. Where that Audi, you could feel the bumps, it was doing its best, and the Porsche did even better, but at the same time being more sporty. This is just 2 notches up. The steering weight in this isn't as natural or isn't as heavy or substantial as in the Porsche, but there's a delicacy, there's a texture of the road coming through the steering that you just don't have in the Porsche, and is far removed from that Audi. This is truly a different take to sport and to luxury that may be as good or even better as the Porsche, but it's different. It is a real nice driving experience, and every time I get into that Macan, I think, yeah, that's it. This Macan is the best. And then I get into this and I'm like, I don't know, maybe this is better. And it's just so hard. This is quieter, it's more comfortable than the others. I prefer the cabin, the view, the driving position here, though I just wish the steering wheel could come even a little bit closer. Even these seats are probably better than what you find in the Porsche. This is a hard one. This comes with more standard equipment. This gets the, you know, the air suspension. This gets a torque vectoring rear differential. And, you know, as is, this is just super fun, super playful. If it's wet, ESC in sport mode, you can drift with this. You really can. I've been very lucky to drive the prototype of this car back in February in the Northwest region with Chief Test Engineer Joachim Rydholm for chassis and drivetrain, and I got to play with this on an ice lake, and it truly drives great. But is it the best here? And is it the car you should buy and spend your own money with? Well, let's hop to the conclusion and find out. I've actually been able to sleep on my conclusion because I filmed the outro yesterday after filming, and halfway through that clip, my microphone died because of the cold. Today is a little bit milder, but yeah, my camera, my microphone just can't handle the cold, and I didn't know about that before I had rigged down. I was inside checking the footage, and at that time it was already dark outside. Because it's December here in Norway, it gets dark like 3:30, so filming this time of year is it's pretty hard. And also guys, this video, I hope you like these types of videos. It takes a lot of time for me, and because of the issues yesterday, this is actually day 3 of filming. So if you want more of these, you have to give this video a thumbs up down below. Comment also which of the cars you would buy, and also subscribe to the channel. It is completely free, but it helps me out a lot. Next year, I really want to try to get to 100,000 subscribers. So yeah, help me out guys. So the Audi, great car, great platform, very efficient, the most efficient of the lot here. If you want to know the real world range of this or how it performs on a long trip, I have a whole bunch of videos about this car already, and I have the triple range test, which was probably the last video or the video before that. This, the most efficient, is great to drive. It's the second roomiest here, the second most practical of the lot, but it is the most noisy when it comes to tire noise. So I think this car makes a lot of sense if you don't option it out too much. Like a decent spec with this is a little less than 1,000,000 kroners, how I'd spec one, but because this is an Audi, you can go to a dealer and you can get a discount. I bought several new Audis the past 10 years, and you can walk into a dealer and you could probably, I don't know, get like a free set of winter wheels, maybe a service pack, and then get something off that sticker price. I'm guessing you can get like 5,000 or 6,000 euros or dollars off the sticker of this, and at that price this makes a lot of sense, despite the flaws with the interior not being as luxurious as the others, and also it being more noisy. The Porsche, this is a hot commodity now. I spoke to a few friends of mine yesterday who sell Porsches, and I'm like, so if I walk into a Porsche dealer and I spec a Macan, can I get any discounts? And they're like, nope, order books are full, many places, so here you're just going to pay the price. And the downside of this is it's expensive. Spec this way, this is by far the most expensive car here. But if you're a little bit stingy on the options and you don't go crazy, you can actually get this for about 100,000 kroners or 9,000 euros or dollars, more than this spec for spec if you're counting on getting a discount on this. So I mean, there's a price difference. But if you don't go crazy on the options, I'm going to link down below how I'd spec one. My minimum spec, around 1,050,000 kroners. And I'm guessing you can get this for about 950,000 kroners. But this is great to drive. I mean, it's the least practical, it's the least roomy of the lot. But it's also somewhere in between this and this when it comes to driving and the experience. Lastly, we have the Polestar. And spec the way I'd spec one, comparatively to all of these cars, like with the upgraded sound system, the advanced driver assistance systems, leather, stuff like that, like the necessaries. This comes out to a little bit more expensive than this. I think I spec one of these to like a little bit less than 1,000,000 kroners, and this one to a little bit more than 1,000,000. It's like 1,000 euros, in between these. So these are basically priced the same. And traditionally, Polestar have had Polestar Space, and you had to order online. But again, I spoke to Polestar yesterday because I talked about making this video and I wanted to represent all of the cars as accurate as possible. And Polestar have now moved over to more of a dealer model. So that means you can go into a dealer and you can actually get a discount if you try to haggle. So I don't know if you're going to get as big of a discount on one of these as one of these, but you have to try. So that means these two, the Q6 E-Tron and the Polestar 3, are priced basically the same in the real world. And this is going to run you about 100,000 kroners spec for spec. But once you start piling these options, this can get very expensive, like the car we have here. So I think if you just want a functioning family electric car that is premium, I think the Audi makes a lot of sense. You can also get it in rear wheel drive. You don't have to, have the nice leathers. You don't have to go for the Bang & Olufsen sound system. So if you spec this sparsely, this actually is a really appealing car compared to maybe a Tesla Model Y upgrading from something like that, because this drives a lot better. And because of the ergonomics, for me at least, it's a lot easier to use, and the seats are miles better than with a Tesla. Maybe not as practical as a Tesla Model Y, but this looks so much better. Like in the right spec, this is probably the most attractive car of the trio. Then we have the Porsche, and I think this and this drive about the same when it comes to the sportiness, the comfort, but they're just a little bit different takes. I think I prefer the way this drives to this, but that may just change like tomorrow or within an hour. They're so close. It really depends on my mood because they're very good, both of them. And this also just has that edge when it comes to the interior. And even, you know, my spec at 1,050,000 kroners, it doesn't include all the leather. If you spend a little bit more money, you can get that. So that's probably how I'd spec mine, but my minimum spec is the one I linked down below. The Polestar, arguably the most comfortable, the most quiet, by far the best sound system. Like the sound system experience in this is insane. And also, it's the most roomy. Even though, you know, the trunks are on paper not as big, in the real world, these three cars are kind of a wash, right, when it comes to practicality, except for the rear seats of that Polestar. So third place, and it is really close between all of these three cars, is the Q6 E-Tron. Because for me, the way I want to spec a car like this, it just gets a little bit too expensive. You're not getting the same interior experience as these others. It's going to be more noisy and not as sharp to drive, but it is a great car. 270 kilowatts of peak charging speed, 10 to 80% in 21 minutes. Yeah, this is an awesome, awesome car. Then we have the Porsche and the Polestar. And this is a take on a Porsche that isn't a Porsche. Like when Polestar said a few years ago they were going after Porsche, this is what they meant. But for me, as much as I like Polestar and as much as I like the Polestar 3, and this could change tomorrow because it's so close, I think with my own money, I'd take the Porsche. I'd take the Porsche. I'd, you know, forgo some of the options if I was price sensitive and I had to get out of the door with one of these at the same price as one of those, because where this is really good to drive, it's just not finished, right? The software experience isn't complete. And that means where you have shortcut buttons and physical buttons to do simple commands with this car and that car, it's buried in menus. Yes, it's probably going to get better with time, but I'm filming this video now. I can't recommend any cars based on future promises that we don't even know about. This is just pure speculation. So this is number one for me. I just love the way it drives. This is a more complete package. The interior experience is the best by a hair's margin compared to this, but also the ergonomic experience behind the wheel, the shortcut buttons, the physical buttons, the stalks, the HVAC. Yeah, this has the least good sound system of the lot, but at the end of the day, I care more about the driving experience than I do about the sound experience. This is more noisy and not as comfortable as that, but I care more about the driving experience and the complete package as I do of those other things. So guys, that is my conclusion, but really close. If you're looking at any of these three, I think you're not going to go wrong either way. So guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please drop me a thumbs up down below, and for more car content, as always, please subscribe. See you guys later and goodbye.